Well, welcome everybody to the first of an MLA alumni panel. I don't know that I've been directing this program for 16 years now, I think. And I don't know that we ever had a panel where some of our alumni came together and talked about what the program meant for them, what they're doing after the program. We've had alumni come in and talk to us, sort of in focus groups and just casually report back to me and things, but we've never really had something where we got a group of alumni together and said, tell us a little bit about what the Master Liberal Arts program, meant for you and how it relates to what you do now. So I'm really excited to have a chance to introduce you to some of our great alumni. They can tell you a little bit about themselves and where they are in life and how their degree served some of their needs and help them get where they are today. And then we have the Q&A feature here in the Zoom webinar. You can certainly type your questions in as they come in. Don't wait to hold them till the end, but you can tell me who your question's for and I can sort of MC and point those questions at our alumni. So thanks everybody for joining us, and a big thank you to the 6 alumni, or is it 7? I think it's 6, right? I'm losing track of who's on my Zoom window. I can't see you all. And then I'm here also, Chris Pastore, the director of the Master Liberal Arts program, with Amy Mulhern, one of my colleagues who's director of recruiting for the College of Liberal Professional Studies. So let me introduce you first to Chris Gibbons. He directs the wealth management practice for Eisner Amper Wealth Management Philadelphia. He's a lifelong writer, singer, soccer player, and father of 2. He doesn't have as much gray hair as me because his 2 maybe are younger, but it's coming. It's coming, right?
It's coming.
I can't have the light on my head because it'll blind you. His MLA concentration focused on the intersection of politics, religion, and philosophy, and the title of his capstone was Miserable Company, a series of short stories about a young man struggling with an unfulfilled life. Chris, take it away.
Hi, everybody. Boy, that was a great intro. I would only add that I'm not a lifelong father of 2. If you were reading that literally, I have a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old. So I have done a lot of things for my whole life, but I've not been a father my whole life.
Well, that probably feels like you've had them for 20 years now.
Every day it feels that way. No, I have great kids. And hopefully they're downstairs eating chicken nuggets and French fries while I'm not cooking dinner. No, but thank you for having me. Thank you for this introduction. The MLA program was huge for me. It sort of gave me permission and sort of proof that all of these disparate things that I was interested in and that I was passionate about could sort of be woven together in coursework and then in my work. So, I direct the wealth management practice of Eisner Amper, which it's an independent wealth management practice. And my MLA program, my philosophy, my religion, my sort of training in that background leads every single day to the work that I do, because all of the conversations that we have with our clients and our prospective clients are around their emotional relationship with money, how they feel about the world around them and the decisions that they make. And so all of this foundational stuff that, at least on the surface, might seem like it doesn't make sense is actually something that I use every single day. And I wouldn't have put all of that stuff together had it not been for the MLA program. So I'm really happy to be here and invite others to this program and sort of share in the success that all of us have had because of this program.
So, Chris, do you have an example of a time when working with one of your clients or one of your colleagues that you really reached back into something that you did while you're here at Penn?
Yeah, so, I ended up coming to my capstone project about 18 months after I finished my coursework. And the reason why it took that long is because I just sort of jumped into wealth management as a career, was getting my feet wet and sort of putting the foundation of my business together. And it was a lot of experiences that I had, quote unquote, in the field, meeting with people, hearing their stories, understanding just how these decisions in their life and the relationships they had affected, their perspective on wealth and on money. And as I was sort of mulling over how I would incorporate my capstone, my advisor said, well, you should be telling these stories. I mean, these are the stories that you should be telling because all of your coursework has led you to understanding how these people think and how they express themselves and how every decision they make with a dollar is in some way an expression of self. you should write these stories because they are the things that you know now. They are the things that you've been, sort of put in the world to share. And so it was this perfect overlap that I never would have seen coming.
That's great. Super. Andie Tursi's here, and she's the Director of Marketing Communication at Cesium. Before taking her current job to lead communications at Cesium, she was a writer at Penn for 12 years, during which time she wrote everything from magazine articles to speeches. She's a longtime member of the Rittenhouse Writers Group, the longest running literary fiction workshop in the country. She holds 2 degrees from LPS, both with a concentration in creative writing. She drafted a novel for her 2009 MLA capstone, and for her Master in Philosophy, which she finished in 2019, she completed a collection of short stories. Andie, welcome.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I'm such a huge advocate of this program and LPS in general, so I'm always happy to recruit new people. And for me, I think that one of the biggest things that I got out of the program is the connections that I made there. Faculty who, not only do you receive this amazing education, like getting to talk about the good earth with Peter Kahn, who literally wrote the book on Pearl Buck. And then I've been able to keep in touch with a lot of my professors, even collaborate with them over the years. And then my fellow students and alumni have just become like some of my lifelong friends. So it's just opened so many doors for me in a lot of different ways. So the people, and then also just getting the confidence to, as a writer, I mean, that was something that I was really searching for. So to be able to work with faculty like Kitsy Watterson, who she helped me with my first capstone, it just gave me the confidence to turn my career around and say, all right, I'm gonna make my life as a writer. Not only, a professional writer by day, but also the structure I needed to tackle those big projects like a novel and a collection of short stories. That just the support there has been amazing for me.
And what led you to take this jump to go over and work for this new firm at Cesium?
I loved my job at Penn. So I got to be a writer for development, marketing, communications, which is fundraising at Penn. So I woke up every day thinking, I don't have $1 million, but maybe something I write could inspire somebody who does to, help Penn cure cancer. I loved writing speeches. I got to interview some of Penn's like wealthiest donors, some of our, most brilliant professors. I loved it. But I just had done it for so long, and this was an opportunity that I knew it would be really challenging. So I work for a tech startup that is a software platform for 3D geospatial data, which is not my area of expertise. So, it was every day I'm learning about something completely different. And that was something that I loved about working at Penn too, so.
Now, do you think that being forced to do things in the MLA that might not have been in your comfort zone, because even though you focused on creative writing, you took courses in other areas, being in our interdisciplinary program, do you think that's made you more comfortable going outside of your comfort zone, let's say, in your professional life?
Absolutely. Yeah, not only the confidence, but also I always sort of approach my education that way, taking like I was a English major in undergrad, and I think I got a minor in computer science and I probably got D's in all those classes, but I just felt like while I'm here, let me learn the things that I'm not good at and the things that I don't know. So that's certainly something that made me attracted to this program in the first place. And I think that's the type of people that you meet in the program that have all kinds of disparate interests, and they're just been really interesting people.
Well, and when you get them all in a writing workshop with Kitsy Waterson, and she makes you do breathing exercises and dance motion exercises. And one of the people on the right is a member of the board of trustees, and another one is a person who works in the library, and someone else works in wealth management. And you're like, okay, this is an interesting group of people from different places all coming together. So I know it's got to be really challenging, but rewarding and eye-opening. Thanks. Hey, J Esposito's here. He's actually a colleague of mine from years back. I haven't seen him in a while. He left us for the Big Apple. He's the director of enrollment systems and communications at Barnard College. He also taught public relations and strategic communication and taught principles and theories of communication at Marymount Manhattan College, where he worked previously. His MLA concentration was media, politics, and society, and he completed a capstone titled The Effect of Emerging Media on Modern Political Campaigns. And I bet you didn't really think of Twitter and how it's going to affect political campaigns and political life as much back then.
If only, right? This was, it was a quote unquote emerging media as I was writing my capstone. Thank you for the intro, Chris. I appreciate it. And thanks for having me here tonight. I echo a lot of what's been said. I'm a huge fan of this program. I talk it up a lot. I came from, I was a first generation college student, and I knew that I was passionate about learning and I was passionate about the liberal arts in particular, but I didn't have one very specific area that I was most interested in. So when I approached Penn, I initially was looking into doctoral programs, specifically within communications. The communications program at Penn didn't offer any flexibility. There was no master's, there was just the doctoral track. And I was working full-time, right? So I was looking for something that was going to be flexible, that was going to fit my schedule, that was going to allow me to complete it while working full-time. But also having that interest in all of these different subject areas, I wanted to be able to tie those into communications. And so the MLA became the perfect place to do that. Thinking through how the MLA impacted my career, right, where I am now. I would say first and foremost, for me, it was about the credential. When I started the MLA, I was in relatively junior roles working within higher ed. And typically in higher ed in particular, once you hit a certain level, you have to at least have a master's to be able to advance, right? So first and foremost, I needed to get the master's to be able to move into higher level roles. But second, as Chris mentioned, I was super passionate about the idea of teaching down the road. And I met some MLA alumni while I was searching at programs. And the alums that I met actually had taught college courses using their MLA degree. So they didn't have doctoral degrees, they had MLA specifically from Penn, and had gone on to teach college classes. And that was very, very appealing to me. So I got the degree. I was not only able to advance into higher level roles within higher education, but the roles that I was looking at, as Chris had mentioned, I left working at University of Pennsylvania to go to New York City. I was specifically looking at jobs at NYU, and at NYU, even the very junior level administrator roles, many of them required master's degrees. So I leapt into one of those junior level roles, and over time, more senior level roles became available, and I was able to advance because I had that advanced degree. At the same time, I was able to then connect with one of my former mentors from my alma mater, which was Marymount Manhattan College, and was able to talk to her about what would be the possibilities, opportunities for being able to teach courses there. I showed them all of my graduate research that I had done. That was enough to be able to get me in the door to be able to teach some classes. And over time, they kept throwing more courses at me as they saw that I was capable of being able to handle the rigor of teaching on top of my regular job. So definitely the credential is number one. Number two, I would say writing and critical thinking skills, specifically the strength of the faculty. That was something that I wasn't fully prepared for when I went into the program. I had always been praised as being a really strong writer, even from a very early age. And when I got to Penn, the professors only took what was already a relatively strong skill set, and it advanced it exponentially to a degree that I wasn't quite prepared for. I had at least one professor sit down with me and say, like, you're not bad, but you could greatly improve, and here's how, and actually went through papers with me and helped me to make those papers better. And then last, I'll just say about the network, I wasn't fully prepared for what wound up being such a lovely camaraderie with classmates. I wasn't thinking through any kind of social aspect when I was looking to go into grad school. It was more about personal enrichment. It was more about that credential, and it was more about advancing my career. I wasn't thinking through, similar to how Andie had mentioned, your classmates. These are other people that are super passionate about all of these different subject areas around the liberal arts, humanities, and social sciences. These are other working professionals in a lot of cases, whether they're in their early 20s or more senior, right? And they're going through what you're going through. They are pursuing a graduate degree while working a full-time job, while raising a family. They have all these other competing priorities outside of the classroom. And I wasn't prepared for just how nurturing that was going to be. And I similarly, as was mentioned by some of the other speakers, made lifelong friends in the classroom. And I'm an old grad. I finished in 2012. That's it. Please ask me all the questions. I hope that's helpful.
Thanks, Jay. Next, coming to us from Madrid is Denise Dalhoff. She's a double alum like Andie of our MLA and MPhil programs. She's a senior researcher in consumer research at the Conference Board and adjunct faculty and senior fellow at Penn's Lauder Institute for Management and International Studies. Her MLA capstone was turning arts and culture medicine into a leisure treat for Philadelphia, promoting the benefits of the arts and addressing stereotypes. Her program of study covered urban culture, sociology, communication, the impact of new media, and ethnographic research, and she earned a certificate in folklore studies. She then pursued her second degree and completed an MPhil thesis titled Community Living Room, Impact of a Novel Third Place in an Urban Setting. Denise, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Actually, as you read this out, it brings back so many great memories. Similarly to what everybody has said, I'm a huge fan of the program. And I didn't go into the program having any professional goals in mind. In fact, my specific goal was to do something just for personal enrichment and for fun, because I had definitely enough degrees. I'm also a first-generation college student, but I do love learning. And so at the beginning, I actually took like an eclectic selection of courses. And that's the beauty of the program. It allows you to do, to take any kinds of courses before you settle on something. And I did found my track because I was so attracted to all the, urban culture courses, sociology, life stories of people, communications. I mean, it all came together, and it was for me, I'm a researcher. I love doing these research projects, and to do that in my own city, like in Philly, to observe people in parks, in coffee shops, in restaurants, and to learn how the social fabric works. I found that fascinating. And you might anticipate where the story goes. So I had no professional goals, but in the end, I settled on ethnography. And being a researcher, I had done actually quantitative and qualitative research before. Qualitative research mostly in terms of interviews, focus groups, but not ethnographic observations. And so I really added that as a tool to my arsenal. And I sure enough, I got to use it in professional settings. I was consulting for a while. We did ethnographic studies, observing nurses and doctors in hospitals, how they would use infusion pumps, and how the whole prescription pathway worked, and in several other settings. And personally, I found it just highly enriching. I learned so much, and in any place actually where I've been, actually after the programs, I got into retail more, retail stores, and even how a store works is so similar, how a park works, for example, what kinds of elements make a place sort of successful or attractive to people. And even, I moved from a couple of years ago, I moved from Philly to New York, and just observing, how a city works, how social relationships in cities work. Now being in Madrid, I just find myself always being an observer. And I'm thinking back a lot about about both programs, the MLA and the MPhil. So again, I had both professional benefits from it and personal a lot. And to this day, and I cannot speak highly enough of the value for me of the programs. And I can also say I met amazing people. And I love the broad range of people. I mean, we had anybody there from, an ad agency, somebody who was a college athlete coach, and to discuss books with them and hear their different perspectives on the same topic, I found fascinating and also really enriching.
Yeah, and I remember over the years of your studies, you introduced us to some new people because you branched out, took a couple courses and worked with some folks over at Wharton because you got interested in that sort of like different approaches to the retail space. And I remember talking about that with you and going back and forth with some of the readers of your papers and meeting some really interesting people that were on Penn's campus but were sort of out of my orbit in the liberal arts and in the School of Arts and Sciences. And I thought that was really fascinating too. You really, went out and sort of made your own program, and it really made a really strong program when you all was said and done.
Yeah, I worked with so many schools, with Annenberg, anthropology, urban, like the School of Social Sciences. And also what I can highly recommend, by the way, is independent studies. If you find a topic that you really like and have an advisor, that's of course the most fun because you can go into the direction that you really are interested in. So yeah, so that's another cool aspect of the program to take advantage of.
Great, thanks. We also have Lauren Cooper here. She currently serves as an interpretive planner for exhibitions at her own Penn Museum. She completed her capstone, Reinstalling Heritage, New American Galleries at the Philadelphia Museum of Art in 2019, and earned her MLA with a concentration in museums and curatorial practices, as well as a certificate in cultural heritage management. Lauren.
Thanks, Chris. Hi. Yeah, so before I entered the program, I had already been working in museums in a museum in Philadelphia. And it's sort of a field that was rapidly professionalizing while I was working in it. A lot of, as some of the other speakers have said, a lot of the opportunities to move up required a higher degree. And a lot of degree programs that are targeted at museums were very rigid. So I didn't necessarily want to get locked into studying something that was part of the field that didn't apply directly to what I was doing. And the MLA program at Penn was really an opportunity to focus in on those areas that I already knew I needed to progress in the line of work, creating exhibitions in particularly cultural and history museums. And it also offered an opportunity to really pick the brains of people who were working in this field. A lot of my professors were working outside of the university as anthropologists out in, doing ethnographic work, or one was a curator at the Philadelphia Museum of Art. And that gave a lot of behind the scenes access to some of the institutions that are a little hard to take a look at if you're just starting out in the field. And it really worked out amazingly. A lot of the classes offered opportunities to take part in projects that were ongoing throughout the city, and to kind of get that work experience under my belt, as I was already working part-time at the time in my regular job. Yeah, and I would say too that some of these connections impacted directly the job opportunities that I was able to get after finishing the program. I actually met who is my current boss. I met her in a class in the Graduate School of Education that I took through this program. She was taking her own professional development class, and having that opportunity to talk to potential employers and future colleagues as a peer in the classroom setting, and to really pick their brains about sort of new research and new innovative ideas of what's going on in the field when there's not the pressure of a work environment where you have to meet deadlines, was a really great opportunity.
Yeah, and you were one of the first students, I think, to earn the certificate in cultural heritage management as well, I believe, right? It's a partnership with the MLA and the Penn Cultural Heritage Center. Penn just hired a new PIK professor, Lynn Meskel, came from Stanford, who's really an expert in conservation and heritage management. So it'll be really interesting to have her at Penn. I think she's going to be a big shot in the arm for the museum, the anthropology and archaeology programs, and I'm hoping that we can continue our partnership with the whole Cultural Heritage Center.
Yeah, that particular certificate, it provided both a lot of guidance, but also a lot of flexibility. There's sort of a core group of people working in the Cultural Heritage Center that teach a variety of different classes, but they are also very open to helping you on your way to researching exactly what you want to research within that field, which was just perfect at the time.
Yeah, in fact, one of the instructors, Peter Gould, who teaches an economics and heritage course, is an MLA alum. He came here when he was trying to retire from business and wanted to do something in his sort of second act in life, because he thought he was done being on boards and all that kind of stuff. So he did the MLA, went to England and then earned a PhD, did a lot of research in the Burren in Ireland and in Central America, and now teaches at Penn and at the AUR in Rome, but also is a member of the board and a faculty member at the Cultural Heritage Center, which is really cool. And he's also one of the members of the board of overseers at the museum. Really cool. So there's a lot of interesting people involved with that program, and it's kind of fun that we got to be, sort of the home base for that certificate as that sort of coalesced. Thanks, Lauren. Allison Doyle's here. She's currently a Market Center administrator with Keller Williams Mainline and an adjunct faculty member at Cabrini University, teaching gender and body studies. She concentrated in creative writing and folklore, and for her kind of final capstone project, she wrote a paper called Pathfinding Representation, an exploration of inclusivity within role-playing video games. Allison, thanks.
Hi. Yeah, so there are a lot of things that people have said that definitely overlap with my own experience. Both Chris and Denise talked about like getting permission and proof that the things that I was interested in, all the things that I was interested in could all mesh together in some project. Jay talked about being a first generation college student and working full-time, and that was my exact experience. I was working full-time at Hot Topic at the King of Prussia Mall while I was getting my degree, which was superb. And Andie talked about gaining the confidence to be a writer and doing what I loved. And that's all things that I gained from UPenn. I went to Cabrini University where I met Nancy Watterson, and she was my advisor for a long time. And she kept pushing me to think about the MLA program. And I kept telling her, no, I'll go elsewhere. I'll go other places. It'll be fine. And I picked one of those other schools and I went there for their master's program. And after 2 weeks, realized it was not the program for me. And I ended up moving back to Philadelphia from New York from that school and starting over. And it was completely terrifying. It was the hardest decision I've ever made, but it ended up being the best decision I ever made because it brought me to the MLA program, which allowed me to find a way to bring all of the things that I had studied. I had been a triple major. I had 2 concentrations and a minor at Cabrini, and I was able to kind of pull all of those together into one thing that really helped me figure out what I wanted to study. Plus, the MLA program was the first place where I was able to write not 1, but 3 papers about video games, and that felt pretty dope. It was also a place where nobody really spent time saying you can't write about that, or that doesn't fit, or that doesn't work. They only encourage you to find a way to make it work. They would give you the map for how to succeed and tell you to get there yourself. And I loved that because you felt like you had the support, but you also felt like you were still kind of pushing your way through. It's like, I'm going to be really nerdy for a second. It's like in Lord of the Rings, when you're the fellowship going through and Gandalf dips out and says, you can find your way to Mordor. And you're like, yeah, sure, I can figure that out. And you end up in Shelob's lair, but you make it home. Super nerdy. But I think that one of the main things that I really gained from the program was that every single person that was in every single class with me wanted to be there. In undergrad, you inevitably get the students that are there because their mom and dad made them. They're there because they have to hit a credit, and they weren't engaged in the conversation. Every single person in every single classroom that I sat in was engaged and wanted to be there. And the conversations that we had were elevated because of that. I don't think I've had conversations that incredible since I left the MLA program. I think it's a mark of how nurturing and strengthening this program is as well, that I want to read literally every capstone that Chris read. So if y'all want to grab some emails, please send them my way. They all sound great. And I'm waiting for Jay to republish with Twitter as accounted for in there. So, you know, if you want to get me a draft into it, no, I'm just kidding. But no, I think that I learned a lot of how I wanted to proceed. I never thought I'd be working in real estate, yet here I am. Yet all the things that I learned in the MLA program still fit with all of that. I did a lot of ethnographic research like Denise, and it's incredible how much that fits into the world around you. And I'm teaching gender and body studies, and being able to learn from the incredible teachers that are in the MLA program helps strengthen who I wanted to be as a teacher. So I think I'm a better teacher and a better person for being in the MLA program.
And you're bold enough to have Christmas decorations up already.
You know what? They went up right before Halloween, and I am not ashamed. I'm not ashamed. I know who I am.
My girls want to know when we're going to go get the tree, but I'm like, it's a live tree. If we get it now, it'll be dead.
Oh, this bad boy's fake, and I can change the colors. It's a great time. Deep down there, Chris, you feel me. You feel me.
Bold choice. Yeah, well, I think that, Allison, that thing about the fact that everybody wants to be in the MLA classroom because you're doing this because you want to, and everybody that's involved, part of the want to may be that it's a credential that's necessary, that professional advancement is calling, that there are new skills you want to develop and old skills you want to polish off, and old content you want to revisit, or all these great reasons to be in the program. But again, that's the great thing I think about graduate work in general, is that for the most part, there's a higher level of self-motivation on the part of all the students. So as an advisor, that's really a lot of fun because people really want to do it. But the MLA is different than an MA program, perhaps. I'm an art historian. If I was advising students in our history program, they have a much more narrow bandwidth of experiences and focus and interests. They all read the same theorists. They all went to the same undergraduate programs. They're all looking for the same outcomes and the same jobs. Whereas MLA, I think I've probably advised 600 students now in the last 15 years. And it's hard to say that any two of them did anything remotely similar to another. Some people, more than one person did ethnography as part of their area of exploration. They might have done some anthropology and some sociology courses, but then some marry it with gender, some marry it with business. I had a student do a capstone and concentration. Really, he was a marketing executive, but he came back to do it, and he did it on the concept of luxury. What does it mean, right? From a sort of socio-cultural point of view, as opposed from the marketing and finance side of things. We've had students come in. One guy actually finished his degree remotely because he actually ran the airport in Iraq for the U.S. Army. And he was a pretty interesting guy to have in the classroom because his skill set was really, really quite different from the rest of ours. But it was like bringing these different perspectives into the classroom is really a lot of fun. The challenge it might be both for students and for us running the program is that a lot of students aren't really sure what exactly they want to study. They have a lot of interests, and sometimes they're concerned that if they don't know what they want to study, how will it all come together? And I think a lot of folks are going to be like Jay, where they want to study a bunch of things, grow some skills because they know they need a master's degree to advance professionally, but they don't feel like doing a master's in higher ed or a master's in international education and do the same cookie cutter swath of required courses over a 2 or 3 year program. So doing something where you create your own concentration, you can partake in some of our certificates or not, gives you a chance to sort of experiment and explore, and then we will work together to figure out how to tie it up into a package. And, some people really come to realization of where their concentration is 3, 4, 5 courses into the program. But there are students that come in 7 or 8 courses done, and they're still in the exploratory mode, and they're not really sure how it all comes together, and almost 100% of the time within 15 minutes, they actually have articulated what their concentration really had been all along, because there was a method behind their course selection, behind understanding what intellectually was appealing to them, and knowing in the course of that conversation, you can pull out of a student what they still want to take away from the program. And that ends up being like the thesis of their capstone. So everybody really, as experimental and as much of a butterfly as you might be, going around sampling all these wonderful, rich opportunities at a place like Penn, there's still a way to recognize that they interrelate with everyone, with all the other topics you've studied. Things kind of tie themselves together without being forced. And I think that's kind of fun for me, because I learn new things when I do engage with so many of you guys over the years, all these different topics and different kinds of courses. And so it's a challenge, but it's fun because it's never the same thing twice. So I commend all of you for doing such rich work while in the program, sort of charting your own path, and then really figuring out how to make that all work for you on the back end when you go out, either continue or go out to the work world and forge new paths. So it's really pretty impressive.
Chris, can I just say something?
Oh, yeah, sure.
It just reminds me so much. It's so reflective of our world now, where, the craziness of the world, people changing careers. And I think the program really prepares you for, being able to going into many different directions. And as you contrasted it with Master of Arts programs where you really have to focus on something. I think the MLA program really reflects the future of the workforce or the careers.
Yeah, I think it's all about flexibility and sort of confidence and conviction that you can change and you can learn and you can make yourself into somebody new, sort of on the turn of a dime. And I think that's what the liberal arts education at the undergrad and graduate level really means. And fortunately, we're capable of sustaining this, so we can have this program in the School of Arts and Sciences. I'm now the president of the Graduate Liberal Studies Association, and so I have a bunch of colleagues who run programs like this across the country. And it's a tough landscape out there because a lot of folks are really focused on STEM and direct professional relationships, where courses of study match specific jobs, specific skill need areas. And the problem with that is that those skill areas may vaporize within 5 to 10 years. So the liberal arts gives you that chance to, I think, be dynamic and respond to circumstances, which is pretty cool. And it's great to work with students who sort of realize that the benefit and enjoy what they're doing, because then every day is kind of a fun experience. I have a couple questions here. Denise, Deborah wanted to know where your accent's from and where did you come from before you came to the States?
Well, I come from Germany originally, and I have lived in the States now for over 20 years. So in theory, I would be there now, but I took advantage of the fact that our office in New York is closed and my company is super flexible. So I've been spending much of the pandemic in Germany with my family. And right now, because I love studying, I'm working on improving my Spanish. That's why I thought it would be good to spend some time in Madrid. But I'll soon go back to Germany for the holidays and then come back to Madrid because our office is actually going to remain closed for longer.
Yeah, we're all remote too. And, you miss seeing people, but it's also kind of really nice to, not have a commute every day. I'll tell you that. One of our other attendees, Rosie, had a couple questions for Andie. She's interested in studying creative writing, and she wanted to know what kind of courses you took for your MLA and your MPhil. And she wanted to know how long it took you to do the 2 degrees.
Oh, it took me a long time. I think the first one, I would say it took 4 years. The kind of classes I took, so I took a lot of classes about the novel, like English literature courses. I took any kind of writing course I could get my hands on, screenwriting, memoir. The hardest class I ever took at Penn was writing for children, taught by Elizabeth Laban. I thought, hey, I've been a professional writer for a decade now, could write a speech, could write an article. I could pull a children's book out of nowhere, right? Hardest thing I ever did in my life. It was so challenging. Yeah, I mean, and then I think the MPhil, I don't know, maybe it took me 10 years to do it because I was kind
It
of.
was more of a savory journey through writing and thinking than a forced march to finish the degree. I think back to maybe it was 4 or 5 years ago at commencement, when a lot of the students that finished up in that given year and over the 3 terms come in March and graduation, and 3 of the women in a row took 8, 9, and 10 years to finish their degrees because they had lives, they had things that got not in the way, but that had to take their own space and time and have their own attention. So everybody sort of charts their own path, and we try to meet everybody where they live, which is good. A couple of years ago, we had a fellow come back after being away for 8 years, and he was away for 8 years because he had an accident in which he was hit by a car when he was in a cab and nearly died. And they told him he was going to die like 4 different times over the next 8 years. And now he's walking around but he changed his mind. He came back after finishing 8 courses before the accident and wrote about his experience and, with survivorship. And it was really an interesting personal sort of documentary of strength and willpower, but also an awareness of the fact that, what you think is going to happen in life doesn't. And it doesn't mean that what happens then is any better, any different, or any worse. It just is. So it was really a fascinating, like sort of self-study that he did. But what was great about it is that we could help him do that. We could bring him back in. His courses didn't expire. I have other colleagues who run programs at some state schools and other institutions. And if you're out for more than 3 years, you hit the time to degree clock maximum. And if you want to return to the degree, you have to pay to re-register all your classes, things like that. So Penn, in its infinite wisdom, has actually been really, when this course was a study was created, 27 years ago, the faculty that got behind the degree really made it super open and accessible with as few constraints on students as possible to be part-time and to be able to pursue different areas of study. And, I try to, carry that with me as my my mantra is that you guys are super dynamic. So I'm going to try and be as flexible as possible to not slow you down or make your life more difficult and challenging. And we're going to help manage all the logistics. And that, I think, results in so much better academic outcomes because they're really academic outcomes that students like you create for yourselves, really, out of this sort of cornucopia of offers that Penn has, which is really cool.
It allowed me to really savor the classes too. Like I was only taking 1 class at a time, working full time. These are Penn classes. So it's like, it's a lot of work. So if you're taking a class on the American novel, you're going to read 20 books and they might be like thick books. So it allowed me to enjoy every class, to really put my time into it, and that flexibility to be like, oh, well, I'm going to have a baby. Like, I'm going to skip a semester, or it's a busy time at work, I'm going to skip a semester. So I wouldn't have been able to finish probably otherwise.
Yeah.
Chris, can I make a comment there?
Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I this is the 3rd or 4th time that someone's brought this up, but I think one of the most profound things for me when I came to my first course, which I think was in 2005, was just the level of skill and professionalism and expertise and just knowledge that was around me. And, when you're an undergrad, you're sort of narrowing your scope and getting to a place in your school where there's, there might be a few other people who are doing what you're doing, but, you're sort of in rarefied air in your little bubble. And I think the most important thing for me when I came to Penn in this program was just realizing that, wow, there were a lot of brilliant people and a lot of brilliant places sort of interested in this co-disciplinary thing too. And that my level was going to have to be raised really, really quickly just to start. And I think that was it was a really, really important moment in my professional development, even though I didn't think about it that way at the time. And I can remember speaking to friends and family and just saying, like, this is real all of a sudden. This is much, much different, much, much harder. And yeah, I found that to be a really important moment.
Yeah, and I think that that's in a way for graduate students, you're trial by fire in the sense that you're no longer just asked to learn and absorb information about a content area and about a discipline. You're actually being asked to dig into what makes that discipline tick and what might make it change and grow. So you're helping the engine of knowledge that is a place like Penn hum along. You're not just breathing in the fumes, you're making the thing go. And even we have great undergrads at a place like Penn, but there's a really different commitment to sort of the enterprise of learning when you get to graduate studies. And the MLA lets you have some fun and really, at the same time, you got to buckle down. But I think that you can buckle down and do it and still enjoy it if you don't try to do too much at once. So I remember, like Andie, we've had those conversations years past. You don't need to take a course this term. What's another 6 months? If you can take it when it fits your schedule better. And then we've had other options. I know, Jay, you were slow doing classes at first, and then some opportunities were out on the horizon, and we were like, we got to make this happen now. You have in the next year, you're going to do this, and you I wouldn't say whipped it into shape, but you really created a plan that was super structured. It was going to get you through the 2/3 of the coursework and the capstone, working with this person, that person to finish this project. And you were off and running, which was great because that was a change in your life circumstances. I think that changes sort of demand curve for where you needed to be. And I think it was great that we were able to help you get where you wanted to go.
MLA students love to procrastinate, like all good grad students, right? And I took years, honestly, thinking about, oh, maybe I'll pursue this, maybe I'll pursue that. And once I finally put on that timestamp and said, all right, I'm doing this in a year, that was when it all just fell into place. And a couple people talked about just like being able to take classes purely for interest. That was a huge benefit when trying to finish as many classes as I could in a matter of, let's say, 4 semesters. It let me plug in some courses just for interest. So Kitsy Watterson's come up in conversation a couple times on this call. I took some of her creative writing classes just purely for fun, right? They weren't necessarily involved in the capstone that I was doing, but it was something that I was able to take for pure pleasure. And like you said, Chris, end up doing yoga next to like CEOs in her class. It was a good time.
Yeah, I know some folks that have taken Kitsy's classes say everybody should be forced to take at least one creative writing course, maybe not with her. But again, I resist that because I don't want anybody to have to do anything, right? I want people to want to do things.
Yeah.
Because then I think you actually generate better academic outcomes when there's, really the student driving, their interest in any of the subjects, which is really cool.
Yeah, if I can briefly, I like that we brought this up just because I feel like in undergrad, there was this frenetic level of energy to get as much done as you possibly can within the 4 years, because there was such an intense timestamp. If you took longer than 4 years, then something was wrong. If you took less than 4 years, then you were a genius. So you tried to fit as much in as you could. But with this program, the encouragement was very much slow down, pick the class on purpose, and really take the class, get something out of it.
Yeah, and if I can just go back to the idea of taking something just for pure pleasure, when you are able to take a class just because you want to, you get so many different people in the room that all care about a topic, but they could be coming from a completely different, walk of life. So, for my program, I was taking classes with teachers, writers, account managers, but we all cared about, identity, history, community, and we were all coming at it from a different perspective and bringing that life experience. So you could really see how to apply these sort of abstract ideas in different environments.
Well, great. Does anybody else in the audience have any other questions? I'm not seeing anything. I think we might have covered everybody. I really appreciate you all taking some time to share your experiences with the folks that could attend this panel tonight. And I appreciate you letting us record it for posterity so we can share it with some other prospective students and actually some of our current students. Because a lot of them, they start taking classes, then they ask me, so what do MLA people do after they finish? These are even people that have jobs, because I think they're doing it because they may be thinking, is there something greener on the other side of the fence? Now, it might not be grass. It could be a toxic algae bloom, but so don't always jump first, sniff a little bit or get a net and poke. But it's kind of fun to think about what people who are equally excited about an exploratory, experimental, academic experience like you guys might be able to do in the professional realm when they get out there. Oh, Deborah just typed a question in before I could sum up here. How'd you balance the luxury of taking classes you wish with a financial investment in education? Does anybody want to take a stab at that? Since you're spending money on a degree, but it's sort of a luxury to do what you want.
I can take a stab at it. I had a lot of financial issues when I was in the MLA program, and Chris was kind enough to help me with a lot of them. I took out a lot of loans, and I'm paying them back still, and I'll be paying them back forever. But at the same time, this felt like a need. It felt like something that was deeply important to advance myself. It didn't feel as though I was just going to college because my parents didn't go and they wanted me to do better. It felt like I was finally making a choice to advance my higher education, to better myself further than what people had expected of me. So it almost felt like I was taking, it felt as though I was investing in myself when I was making those choices. So it didn't feel as though I was, even though I was living with roommates and living paycheck to paycheck and struggling every day, and still are, everybody is, but, it still felt as though this wasn't necessarily a frivolous purchase. It felt as though it was something that was really going to pay off in the end, and it has, so.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. And I think you never really know how you're going to use the tools that you're given, right? So you're taking, my capstone advisor was a creative writing teacher, and I am not a creative writing person. I'm not a finance person either. I'm a philosophy person. So it's all of this stuff, like you just never exactly know where the connection is going to happen. And so as you feel yourself nudged in these different directions or drawn to these certain things, I use stuff from my coursework every single day in my work, but I would guess that the average person would never put those two connections together. And that's okay, because I don't want the average person to, I want that to work for me, and that works really well for me. And so I think that's we talked about giving ourselves permission. That's the permission, which is like, go to your interest and then figure out the pathway back to how it can apply, because you're not going to really know that ahead of time, but you do have a duty to yourself and to your development as a person to go seek out that stuff.
Great. Do you guys have any parting thoughts that you want to share with any of our audience members? You covered a lot of ground. I really appreciate it. It was great seeing all of you guys. I wish it would, as easy as it is to convene virtually, it's still kind of nice to convene live and then maybe afterwards go out for a drink somewhere. But I think 2023, 2024, we'll get there. We'll get there eventually.
Yeah, we'll all rage that drink for 2025.
Yes, we will.
All right. Well, thanks so much, everybody. I really appreciate you giving some of your time back to the MLA program. And I wish you all good luck, continued good fortune. And thank you for spending some time with us. And I'll see you again soon, I hope. Good night, everybody.
Good night. Thanks, Chris.